Alright, good morning guys. What we're going to do today is jump into our next section, which is 2-point perspective. So if you would, open your sketchbook to a new page. At the top, you'll want to label it 2-point perspective notes, and also add your name in the upper right hand corner. So after this, what we're going to do is the same as 1-point perspective. We're going to give ourselves a horizon line, which if you remember from before, that horizon line represents our eye level. You want to make sure that it's nice and horizontal and that it's not tilted in any direction. But this time, instead of putting a vanishing point right there in the middle, we are now going to instead put one way over here near the edge of the paper. And we're going to label that one the LVP for the left vanishing point. And then we're going to put our second one way over here on the right edge of the paper and label that our RVP for right vanishing point. Now things in 2-point perspective are quite different than 1-point perspective, because what it means is instead of having an object or a cube with the front face looking at you, it's turned and it's tilted just a little bit in space. So if we look at a little box, this is just a little old jewelry box that I have. 1-point perspective means the front face is looking at you straight on. So we always start with whatever that front face shape looks like, whether it be a square or a rectangle. But 2-point perspective, that object then gets turned and is tilted. So now the portion of the box that's facing you is this edge, this vertical edge. So a vertical line is the way we go about starting a new cube in 2-point perspective. And that to that is the most important aspect of understanding the difference between 1 and 2-point perspective. So if you would, on your page, we are going to start. We're going to make our first cube below the horizon line. Don't get too close, come down a good little bit, and make it 2 inches tall. Just a nice straight vertical line. And I'm offsetting mine just a little bit to the left. 2 inches there. So that's that front edge looking out at us directly. Now what we're going to do is take the bottom and the top of this edge, and I'm going to make that extend to my right vanishing point. And the left. By doing this, it sort of looks a little weird until we get a little bit further, but this is going to create the 2 sides now. We can now see the left face over here and the right face over here on this side. Now where you place your cube is going to be really important, where you place that front vertical line, because notice this time I've put it closer to the left vanishing point. So what that means is this side is more foreshortened than this side. You can see that the angles here are a little bit steeper and more skewed, and here they're a little bit lower, more subtle, as they stretch way over there to the right vanishing point. So the next thing that we're going to do that's important to know, if the left side is more foreshortened, I'm going to come in with a vertical to cut off the width of that left side. And I'm going to make it narrower than I will on the right. So I'm going to find a nice straight vertical. Make sure you compare your ruler to the edge of the paper before you make a mark. And I'm going to trim that off. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the right side, but this time it's less foreshortened, so that means I can stretch and make this side a little bit wider to give it the natural appearance of a cube. Double check that your line is straight vertical, and you can cut that portion off. So now we have our complete left face and right face. To create the top of this cube, since it's below the horizon line, it's below our eye level, so we would see the top. What we're going to do is take this opposite left corner and I'm going to connect it to the right vanishing point. I sort of call this the crisscross. Crisscross this corner to the right vanishing point, and then I'm going to take the right corner and crisscross it to the left vanishing point. And that creates that top plane. So you can see that in general these lines here and here tend to be moving in the same direction, and here seem to be moving in the same direction. Now if you'd like, this is a good time to go ahead and erase your extra diminishing lines that you no longer need. Okay, so now that I've got all of those diminishing lines erased, we now have a really nice solid cube in 2-point perspective. The next step is to create the transparent portion of the cube that we can't see. So we should be able to see the bottom plane and then the back left and the bottom right. Back right. So the same way that here at the top, we took these outside corners and crisscrossed them to their opposite vanishing point. We are going to slide down to the bottom corners and do the exact same thing. But this time, since it's going through the cube, we are going to make those lines dotted. So left corner to the right vanishing point with a dotted line. Remember to keep your dots nice and small and very close together. It is okay if you sort of widen them as you come outside of the box, but inside the box you need them to be very, very close. And the bottom right corner to the left vanishing point. Now, you want to make sure that where these two lines intersect, you definitely want to make sure that you have one dot, one tick mark from this line, and one tick mark from this line actually touching at that intersection point. Then all that's left to do, now that we have the bottom plane, is we should be able to drop in a vertical from this top back corner to this bottom back corner, and it will also be a dotted line. Now if you've done everything correctly, you should be able to make sure it's a true vertical and have one tick mark from each of those three lines touching. If you see that that back line is tilted to get those corners to meet, that's going to tell you that one of your front lines that should be vertical is probably tilted a little bit. It's very, very common for students to let these lines get a little bit tilted outward instead of being a true vertical. So if you see that that back line has to be crooked in order for those two corners to meet, go back and double check this vertical, and this vertical, and that will probably fix your problem. Now that we have this very back corner and I have all three dots meeting and touching, anything from beyond those dotted lines, we need it from the front corner to the back, but any of the dots beyond that we can erase. And same thing for this side. We need from here to the back corner, but anything beyond that we can erase and get rid of. And that is a 2-point perspective box. So now let's talk for just a minute about the dimensions of space again. I know that in our 1-point perspective notes we talked about those 3 dimensions of space: height, width, and depth. Now, in 1-point perspective, when we looked at that, height was represented with vertical lines, width was represented with horizontal, and depth was represented with diminishing. But because this cube has now turned, and we're no longer seeing the front face, we're seeing the edge facing us, these things are going to change just a little bit. Height is still going to be represented by vertical lines. And we can label that height. But where the change happens is the width. The width of the cube is no longer horizontal because it's become tilted. So width is now represented as a diminishing line. And depth would be over here on the other side. It is also represented by diminishing lines. So that's where the big change happens, is in our dimension of width. So let's practice this one more time together before we start our practice assignment. We're going to come up here to the top above the horizon line and try another cube in 2-point perspective. So this time I'm going to slide it more over to the right hand side. So I'm going to start with a vertical 2-inch line. Step number 1. Step number 2, connect top and bottom to both the left and the right vanishing points. Now I have my 2 sides. Now I need to cut those sides off for step number 3. This time, this is more to the right, so the right side should be more foreshortened, so I'll make it narrower. I'm going to cut this off with the vertical. And then the left side should be a little bit wider because it is slightly less foreshortened with the vertical there. Next, we're going to make our crisscross corners for the bottom. The right corner goes to the left vanishing point. The left corner goes to the right vanishing point. And now we have our 3 solid sides, left, right, and bottom. Now to make this guy transparent, we've got the bottom side now, so what we're going to do is slide up to the top corners and crisscross those as well. The left corner will go to the right vanishing point, but it will be dotted. The right corner at the top will go to the left vanishing point. I want to make sure that those dots touch right there in the corner. And where those 2 lines intersect, I've got 1 dot here, 1 dot there. I should be able to drop in my back vertical with this bottom back corner. And that is my next cube. If I start to erase the parts that I don't need, that will clean it up, make it look nice and tidy. Darken this one line right here. And there are your notes for 2-point perspective.